Hey there, ABC. I hope everybody is doing really well today. I would love to be outside. It is amazing outside, but my neighbors are all mowing their yards all at the same time, and that would get really loud on your recording today. So I am in our guest room. You can see this little piece of art. That's my wife's piece of art there behind us. You can kind of look around. That's the closet doors. Those are mirrors. You can kind of see around. So this is the guest room of our house. Got lots of little knickknacks and kind of everything else in here. So anyway, that's one piece of our house. Today we're continuing kind of this walk through Jesus's last week of his ministry, and so today this is kind of what happened on Tuesday of Holy Week. So. Today is the day when Judas very likely met with the Sanhedrin. He went to them and he kind of made a deal with them. Some money, 30 pieces of silver, and he would turn Jesus over to them. So he made that deal very likely on Tuesday. But today is also the day when the disciples ask Jesus a lot of questions. Jesus explains a whole lot of things about what is going to happen to his disciples. And so this is kind of what happens. The disciples, they watched Jesus ride into Jerusalem. They walked with Jesus as he kind of went into Jerusalem. They saw all this stuff happen, and they kind of feel the weight of this week. They don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they know that things are like intensifying quite a bit. And so they kind of feel the urgency of what is going on, and they have all of these questions that they want to ask Jesus. And one of them is they know Jesus has talked about this period of time where he was going to go away, but then he was going to come back. And so they're trying to understand this, and they're like, okay, so you're going to come back. What should we expect? What should we be watching for when you come back? How do we know when you'll return? And then Jesus goes into this kind of explanation that we refer to as the Olivet Discourse. This is where Jesus is kind of explaining to his disciples exactly what's going to happen at the end of time and all of these things. And so they say, Jesus, how do we know when it's the end of the age? How do we know that when you'll return? And so Jesus kind of goes and explains to them, hey, certain things are going to happen. And I mean, there have been questions about this considering the coronavirus. People have been asking the question, hey, is this coronavirus a sign of the end times? Because Jesus said that certain things are going to happen. You know, in Matthew 24 and 25, he kind of explains what you can look forward to. He said, wars are going to happen. Rumors of wars are going to take place. There's going to be famine. There will be natural disasters. And it's implied in that, like, we could consider disease to be in that category, pestilences to be in those categories. And Jesus says, hey, all this stuff is going to happen, and this is what you need to know. These things are all birth pangs. These things are not the end, but these things should be opening your eyes to the fact that the end is drawing near. These things should make you aware in a way that maybe you weren't before. These things should kind of open our eyes, that they should give us a sense of urgency. Then, you know what? He says after that, things are going to intensify. So after these things happen, because here's the reality, these things have been happening for 2,000 years. Wars and rumors of wars and famine and natural disasters, like all of these things are happening. And Jesus says these are birth pangs. These are the things that should be making us aware of an imminent return. And so after that, Jesus says, there will be false prophets that arise. There will be false teaching that starts taking place. And so if these things should open our eyes and give us a sense of urgency, then what it should do is he's saying, hey, you know what else is going to take place? The true gospel. It's going to be proclaimed to the ends of the earth. He kind of explains at this point, like, time is waiting to be filled up so that the gospel can go everywhere. And so then Jesus says, you know what? Nobody knows the exact time. Nobody knows exactly when I'm going to return. But you know what? Things will get rough in the world. Things will get intense in the world. These famines, the wars, all of this stuff will take place. And you know what? Then things are going to get rough for God's people. Things are going to get intense for God's people. It will become very hard. It will get really intense, and people will actually start persecuting them more. These false prophets will arise, all of this stuff, and then I'm going to return. So people have asked the question, is the coronavirus a sign of the end times? And the way that Jesus, I think, looks at it and sees it is, yeah, absolutely. The short answer is yes, the coronavirus is a sign of the end times. Just like 100 years ago, the Spanish flu was a sign of the end times. And then 300 years before that, the Black Plague was a sign of the end times. Like all of these things, they ought to be signs to us, be kind of pictures to us. They ought to make us vigilant because they ought to make us mission focused. They ought to actually make us aware that, hey, things are picking up, that Jesus' return is imminent, that he intends to come back really soon. And then also they ought to make us aware of the fact that there are going to be other people that are going to try to draw people towards a false gospel, towards a false proclamation. Right now, the prosperity gospel, the promise that if you believe in God, that he will give you everything you want. He will give you your heart's desire. And if you don't have your heart's desire, then you haven't believed enough yet. And that false gospel is going forth. People are being wooed to that by the thousands, by the hundreds of thousands. They're not believing for the sake of submitting to Jesus. They're believing for the sake of something that they might receive from God, some kind of material wealth or possession or promise or something like that. They're not believing for the sake of salvation. And so you know what? False prophets are out in our world right now. And as these things happen, wars, famines, rumors of wars, disease, COVID-19, as these things happen, false prophets are going to go out and they're going to try to win people to their gospel. And so this should give us a sense of urgency. This should make us mission focused. This should give us this desire to go out and love our neighbors, to share the gospel with them. Because you know what? Other people are going to be trying to give them a false hope, and we need to give them a true hope. This should be setting us out to invite them to church, invite them to Easter. It's been said more people are going to attend an Easter service this week than have attended at least in recent history. Ground yourself. So on top of that, the encouragement is to ground yourself in God's word. Ground yourself in God's word that you might not be led astray when these false teachers do start coming and do start trying to draw people away. So is this pandemic a sign of the end times? Well, yeah. Absolutely. And just like all of these signs have been happening now for the past 2,000 years, they're meant to open our eyes. They should open our eyes. They should give us a sense of urgency. They should make us mission focused. And that's what Jesus is telling his disciples. So then they ask, well, Jesus, when are you going to come back? And Jesus says, nobody knows that time. Nobody knows that time. You can look at these signs. These signs will help you kind of see, hey, things are picking up, things are progressing, but nobody knows the exact time when Jesus is going to come back. Here's the point. When you see these things, be mission focused and let the gospel go to the ends of the earth. So Alliance Bible Church, I want to call you to that today. Love your neighbors today. Invest in them. Then share the gospel with them. Give them a real, true hope. Invite them to church. Invite them to our Easter service and ground yourself in God's word that you might not be led astray. So that's the encouragement. That's what Jesus said in his Olivet Discourse. That's the Tuesday of Holy Week, as he shared these things with his disciples. So that's my encouragement for you today. Thanks so much for joining me.